On today's episode, we have Illinois Basketball Coaches Association board member and head basketball coach at Geneseo High School, Brad Storm. We talked to Coach Storm about leaving and returning to a program, coaching in a small town, commuting long distances for conference games, and technology in the game of basketball. As always, thank you for listening to the After the Timeout podcast in partnership with the Illinois Basketball Coaches Association.
All right, Coach. So we're going to start off with the opening tip. We wanted to start, when you were growing up and you started to think about a career path, what did you originally want to be? I don't know if any of us originally started off wanting to be coaches, but what did you originally want to be? And then how did you know you wanted to kind of try to be a coach?
Yeah, I tell you, that's a kind of an interesting path. I did not know what I wanted to be. I knew I liked science. And wanted to maybe do something in the science career. I was a biology major and environmental studies minor at Augustana while I was playing basketball there. And I had no dream of being a teacher. In fact, I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. It was basically, I want to do something else with my science degree, and teaching was not even in the picture. So I went to graduate school at Indiana, followed my future wife there. That was kind of had opportunities to go maybe play overseas or go to a couple other different graduate schools. But she went to Indiana University for School of Optometry. And so fortunately, they had something there for me. So I made the smart move and followed her there. And she's kind of the one that got me on this path. I was working towards, aquaculture, fish farming type thing. I was fascinated with fish and liked fish and wanted to kind of explore that career path. But after playing, I didn't realize I would miss basketball so much. Really had a hole with the competition and kind of just the whole aspect of basketball. And I was still playing pickup, and I actually was on a really good intramural team at Indiana and playing against some high level competition, but it wasn't the same. And she said, well, why don't you coach? And I said, well, I can't really coach and do this career and everything else. She says, well, be a teacher. I'm like, I don't want to be a teacher. So she kind of got me to take a couple of ed classes, and tell you, I just kind of fell in love with it. And it took a little while, a few years before I really had a passion for teaching like I did the game of basketball. But it was probably the best move I ever made. I found that I love teaching, and I'm supposed to retire here in 3 years, but I don't really want to stop teaching. So it's kind of, she was the one to help me get on that path. It definitely wasn't one I was looking to be into at any time until right there.
That's awesome, Coach. It's always interesting to see how people's paths go different places, Yeah,
it definitely wasn't the normal route where people are like, oh, I want to be a coach or anything like that.
So we want to get into a little bit, just getting to know Geneseo, kind of where you guys are located, the history of your program, the town. I know a little bit about it because my father-in-law coached at Prophetstown for 39 years on the girls' side. So I kind of know, I know where you are.
Your father-in-law was who?
Don Robinson.
I was just gonna say, I had to be Don Robinson. That's crazy. Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
I know Don. Yeah, I know Don.
Yeah. So I know where you guys are and kind of about your program, but give our listeners a little bit of history about what you guys got going on.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Geneseo is we're located right on Interstate 80, about 30 miles east of the Quad Cities, Moline area, and it's a I guess the town itself is only about 6,000, 6,500, but we have a lot of subdivisions around outside of town that kind of double that. We're a school of 800 now. When I went to school there, we were 1,200. So it's definitely dropped enrollment over time. And it's a great place to raise a family. I mean, my wife is from East Moline, and we both moved back to this area for her job after I was coaching out there already in Indiana. Kind of gave that up and came back here for her career, and then I kind of started over. But we knew that this was an area that we could really enjoy raising our kids in Geneseo. So I've taught. Actually, I only taught at Geneseo for a couple of years when we moved back, and I've been at Moline and then Erie for 27 years now. So we've lived in Geneseo, a couple of different homes. Then we built a home north of town about 16, 17 years ago, and been here ever since.
Well, and I'm glad Todd prefaced it. He knows where it was, but I didn't know. I didn't fully know where it was, so I think I learned as much as our listeners there. We wanted to get into, you kind of talked about your different schools you taught at, and we're going to
Mhm.
get into that later in the episode. But, we kind
Okay.
of wanted to get into, you were the head coach at Geneseo, you stepped
Yeah.
down for a little bit and you came back. And, we've talked to multiple coaches lately that have either stepped aside or taken a new job. But
Sure.
for you, it's interesting, maybe a little bit of a two-parter. What was that experience like to tell your kids you were stepping away? And then what was it like to kind of tell the next group of kids that you were coming back?
Yeah, it was different. I think it was probably more different for me than it was any of the players or anything. Geneseo is kind of a unique place. I wouldn't say that most people would find it as a dream destination for a coaching profession. It's a really, really tough place to win a lot of basketball games. Great place to coach, great place to live, but really tough place to win a lot of games. And if you win 15 games, it's a really good season. And 20 is a special season. We've won a few regionals, and Geneseo's been to a couple of Sweet 16s. We went to one with my son in 2008. But those are like mythical seasons here. So the competition is just really tough, and it's a tough place. But when I came here after coaching at Erie, I coached here for 5 years, and my son was graduating in 2008. And there was a couple of things that probably caused me to step away. One was I wanted to see him play in college. He went to Northern Illinois, and my daughter was going to be an incoming freshman at Geneseo, and I wanted to watch her play all her sports. And so it was kind of a selfish thing there. I wanted to get to experience that. The other thing was I was exhausted mentally. I probably didn't have the same approach that I had when I came back. And it was just, I needed a break. And those 4 years off, I would never regret it. It was awesome getting to follow him around. And, when he played at Minnesota or Illinois, Purdue, places like that, we could go watch him play. And then DeKalb's only an hour and a half from here. So we saw most of his home games. One of the two of us did. One was usually going to the Daughters games. One was going there. But we were used to that growing up with the AAU and club volleyball and everything else. So it was great. I don't regret it at all. And I know that there was a lot of coaching I didn't miss for those 4 years. I really enjoyed not coaching parts of it. But as time went on, there was the part with the relationship with the kids, the competition aspect, and the fun of getting a team going from point A to B to C to D. I missed those things, and it just was kind of a weird thing to when my son graduated from NIU. Well, actually, when he was done playing at NIU, he graduated early. But when he was done playing and my daughter was done with high school, that coach left in July, and they tried to get me to come back. And at first, I said no, I'm fine, I'm good. I'm kind of enjoying this. And she was going to Iowa State as a track and field athlete. Thought, well, I could watch her, and all that. But the more they talked to me again, and I was really starting to sway the other way, coming back again, and they convinced me, and I came back with a whole different perspective. And that's what 11 years later now, really enjoying it, loving it, and so I think it was pretty easy for the kids to understand and people to understand that I was kind of doing it for family the first time. Maybe they wouldn't understand the exhaustion part, but the family part, and then coming back. Most of the people were, pretty happy and agreeable and excited for me to come back. So that made me feel good too.
So I want to build on that a little bit then.
Yeah.
You talk about the relationships and the community a lot here. So, I've learned this through my father-in-law. When you coach in a small town, kind of winning and losing gets a little bit more magnified, right? Everybody's at the game.
Sure.
Everybody knows everybody, right? They're talking about it. It's kind of a bigger deal. So did you find that, that helps, kind of getting kids to get into basketball as they were growing up in the community, because it's such a thing?
I think it did while ago. I'm not sure that's the same case anymore. I think it was definitely different knowing that, I knew a lot of people knew me. I'd played there. My parents knew know a lot of the people and everything. It's probably hard for a mother of a coach or a wife of a coach to sit in the stands sometimes and hear things, because not everybody's going to be happy or agree with what you're doing, or around town at the donut shop and coffee and things like that. But I think it was that part of it has been great too. I mean, you're part of the community and you know a lot of people, and you enjoy getting out in the community and meeting some of the parents of the young kids that are at camp, and you see them running around with their camp shirt on, and you talk to the parents, and I really enjoy that aspect of it too. So I try to be a part of the community. But there is the negative side too. And as far as getting kids out, it does seem to have changed. I think earlier in my career at Geneseo, it was pretty easy to get kids excited about basketball. Nowadays, it's changed a little bit. And I don't know if changing conferences has had a play in that, because we're going to a conference that's really hard to compete in now. And kids are not really excited about that, or if it's just they've got so many things going on. And to be honest, when I was gone for those 4 years, the coach that was here did nothing with the youth program at all. And it went from, we were having, 160 kids at our summer camp. When I came back, we had 24 coming to camp. And that was hard to get that back going again. Parents were used to not taking their kids to basketball camp, and it just what the youth program wasn't important anymore. And we're still battling that. We're actually revamping our youth program as we speak, kind of going back to an old model. Got a whole new board and somebody in charge of it. An ex coach of mine, or assistant coach of mine, actually is kind of with young kids, is taking it over. And so I think we're excited about that future of it. But we had to do something, because we were losing kids, and kids were not coming out anymore, or coming out and then not staying with it.
Just a quick follow-up before we move on to the next question. Do you feel like those same kids were finding other sports to do, or just weren't being involved, or what did you see in that pattern?
The biggest thing is not being involved. They were actually choosing to play less sports in high school, and at a school of 800, that's tough. When you lose a lot of good athletes that way. And some of them had different reasons. They wanted to focus on baseball, wanted to focus on football, whatever. You hear that a lot. They don't really focus on it in the winter, but that's their excuse. But we also were getting word that some of them were like, well, we're going against the Molines and Rock Islands and Quincy's and Galesburg and UTs, and they have kids that practice basketball all year long. And our kids can't do that. They're playing 3 different sports. And we're getting word that some of them are, we don't want to be embarrassed every time we go play one of those teams. And so it's easier to give into vanity, I guess, and quit for some of them than it is to go out there and compete. Even if you're not as good as them, go out and compete, or better yet, to try to, improve your skills. So we've lost some numbers that way, and we're dealing with smaller numbers of kids that we're trying to compete with, because that's a factor apparently right now. We're hoping that eventually the newness of the Big Six wears off, and that we rise up to it instead of shy away from it. But I think these first couple of years, we've got some kids that are looking at it in a different way. And we were very successful the first year, but we also had one of the best players in the state, and Isaiah Rivera. So we competed in the Big Six. I think tied Rock Island for second. But the last couple of years have been really tough. And most years are going to be that way. So we're trying to find kids that can kind of look at it differently and really want to go out and compete, no matter, that we're playing schools 3 times our size and kids that play basketball year round.
So it's funny you're talking about the conference, and you and I kind of talked about this.
Me and John will agree with you on this.
Yeah. Well, and we were talking, you and I were talking off air just about your conference and about the area you coach, and I texted Todd off air, and I said he has a conference game that's 2.5 hours away. And so first maybe tell our listeners a little bit about your conference, but then also kind of take our listeners through what the experience is like to travel through the state 161 miles for a conference game.
Yeah, a lot of people look at that and say, oh my gosh, that's terrible, and everything else. Well, from our perspective at Geneseo, our travel has gotten a lot shorter. Our conference was was the NCIC years ago, and then the NIB 12, Northern Illinois Big 12. And actually Sterling was our closest conference game before, and that was an hour bus ride away. Everything else was an hour and a half or more. We're going to Morris and Canelan, Sycamore, DeKalb, and everything. Ottawa was relatively close. LP was about a little over an hour. But and now Sterling's our second farthest conference game at an hour away. We do have the one trip to Quincy, which is a long one we can talk about. But otherwise, we're going to, Galesburg's 45 minutes away, UT's 20 minutes away, Moline and Rock Island are 30 to 40 minutes away, and Alleman's 35 minutes away. So the trips have really shortened things up. And I think that was a big factor for Geneseo going to that conference, because a lot of sports play on Tuesday nights. Girls play basketball on those nights, and baseball's on Thursdays and Tuesdays or whatever. So getting kids back at midnight was not ideal in those sports. It hasn't been great for boys basketball, but I think it's probably been a help for a lot of other schools or other sports in terms of travel. But yeah, that trip to Quincy, we almost look at it as a treat, because we only have to do it once. Quincy has to do it a whole bunch of times. And they're used to it. They don't mind it at all, they say. But for us, we get the big charter bus and we get out of school, early and we drive down for the 2 games and we watch a movie on the way back. So it's really not a bad trip. Actually, being on a charter, I'll take that over the hour bus ride to Sterling on a school bus with my legs all cramped in there and everything else.
No,
What do you,
no
well,
doubt.
I do have a quick follow-up. What do you think, what do you think are the major differences between, schools that are in the small towns and some schools that are very basketball rich and very basketball passionate and very, and I'm using a Quincy as only because we're talking about Quincy as an example, and then other towns that may not have that basketball richness, excitement. I guess what do you think the differences are, maybe just within the city town culture?
Yeah. I think there's a couple of probably things at play there. Well, one, the Western Big Six is the basketball conference, and we're a football school by tradition. So that already sets us back a little bit. Those kids in those other schools play basketball, and they want to grow up being a basketball player at those schools. And we're trying to get kids that want to be football players that also can contribute in basketball. The other thing is, a lot of those kids in those schools, and I'm not trying to get socioeconomical or anything else, but they don't have the means to do other things that some of our kids do. So they're playing basketball on the playgrounds. They're doing, they're looking for things like that to do. Our kids, playing outside is almost like, oh no, that no way we can do that. We got to have something scheduled in the gym. And we're only going to do things when something's scheduled. They don't do things on their own because they're at soccer or they're at football or at baseball or they're doing something with their vacationing with their family. So I think we have other things that kids want to do as well. Whereas maybe in Rock Island or East Moline and Quincy, those kids, they just want to play basketball and that's what they do in their off time. And that's something we just have to overcome in this conference.
All right, so we're going to take a little halftime break here. We call this halftime adjustments. We're going to get a little basketball. We're going to go basketball theory, I guess, right?
Okay.
So you're playing a team that's big, right? They got 6'4" guys, whatever size they are, right? They got two big guys. You got a small team. Maybe you don't have anybody that can match up with them, right?
Right.
You're in the second quarter. You're down 10-11, and you're looking at the stats and like this team's killing us in the paint, right? They're killing us. So you're like, hey, I'm going to call a timeout.
Okay.
What are some of the adjustments you're making to try to combat that? Points in the paint differential, the size gap, in game.
Yeah. Well, this is a common thing for us. Again, usually they're not necessarily 6'4", they're 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", and built like men or can jump out of the gym. But so we have this situation a lot. So you seem to understand Geneseo's situation based on that question. There's a couple of things that I think. Well, first of all, we know we're going to be in that situation a lot, so we try to already have a plan. How to neutralize that size difference a little bit. And if we're doing that and we're still down 11, 12, 14 points, whatever, I guess maybe it would have been 30 if we hadn't tried to neutralize it. But we do try to do some different things. I think it depends on what type of team we have at the time, how deep we are, how quick we are, and things like that. Some things that we've done maybe more specifically. If we have some quickness that can cause problems, we might try to change our defense to put more pressure on the offense, maybe create some turnovers before they can get inside or make it harder to enter the ball, trap the passers or something to make them move it and pass it on the perimeter. Especially if we're deep, we can run a lot of guys in at them, maybe press and crank things up defensively. One time I know we were really deep and we had something called the chaos squad, and their only job was to go in and create chaos for a little while. And it included, maybe 1 or 2 starters, but also 3 subs that didn't play a whole lot, but that was kind of their role. And we would try to keep teams from just being in their normal set and be able to get the ball inside easy. Another option that we've got, we could maybe put in, or if it's an option, we could call timeout and go to this. Defend the ball in the post a little bit more by fronting and using a weak side to play behind. Just trying to, and then put ball pressure on the guard. Just try to make the guards beat us, not let them throw it inside so easy and make them do something different. So use quickness and positioning to keep the ball out. We also have something that we call fire, which is a post double. We've done it different ways, and so maybe we would switch to our fire defense and double the post again, trying to make the guards beat us. The problem is that our opponents also usually have really good perimeter players, and so I guess you pick your poison. If they're killing in the post, and you hope that you can make their guards maybe be a little less effective.
I think once they have really big kids, Todd and Brad, and also good guards, I think that's where you pray. I think that's the instrument is you pray.
Sometimes the other team's just better.
Yeah, yes. So, Todd and I always like to tell, our guests that, we like to do our homework. As you kind of alluded to, you're a science teacher.
Yeah.
I kind of did some background research. And we wanted to kind of talk about, for you, let's tie science and basketball together. What's a time where you kind of feel like you experimented with something with your team and you're like, wow, that worked? And maybe another time you experimented with the team and you found out maybe that was the wrong mix of chemicals.
Oh, that latter one happens a lot over the years, especially when I was younger. Probably more so, because I certainly made the mistake as a young coach of, seeing something at a clinic or whatever and deciding to put it in just because it looked like it was great or worked for that college team. So, it should work for us. Maybe changing things up a little bit too much at times, but that probably over time allowed me to know better what I liked and didn't like, what I was comfortable with, and that I definitely needed to slow my roll a little bit and putting things in. So there's been a lot of things I've experimented with over time. Some of them have stuck, or at least stuck to some degree. One that comes to mind a few years back when we had that really good player. He's at Colorado State now. He was about 6'4" and really good in the open court. And we wanted to push the ball because teams were doing a lot of things to keep him out, a lot of junk defenses, double teams, triple teams. So we wanted to try to get some opportunities before they could get set in their defenses. And Mike Neighbors has a really aggressive offensive transition, and so we named it Razorback, and we really had a lot of success with that. I think it helped us a lot, and we still use it on turnovers and missed shots. But we've really kind of backed off, probably taken some of their freedom away because we don't have quite the same players in the open court or shooters for that matter either. So we're trying to, maybe use that still, but adapt it in different ways from year to year. Another one was a 2-3 zone that comes to mind. We knew we couldn't run it like Syracuse does. We don't have those type of players, but a lot of people would love to have a defense that's like their 2-3. But I did find something I liked from a coach in Iowa. His name was Al Marshall, and I studied it. He runs it a little bit different than a normal 2-3. It really helped us in 2015 to win a regional. We were playing Dixon. They were number 3 in the state, and we were in this championship game. It was at Sterling, so we were both of us were actually familiar with the court, but it was kind of fun. They had Isaiah Roby, but we had an athletic 6'9", 235-pound AllState or two that really could protect the rim for us. And we ran that 2-3 zone, and it threw them off big time. And their offense was just way out of sorts. We hit some shots. Our big guy dominated the boards, and we ended up winning double figures for that regional championship. And I give the 2-3 zone a whole lot of credit for that because it worked really well. And we still use that as one of our zone defenses. It's a little different when you don't have a 6'9" All-Stater in the middle, and he actually is in the NFL now. He went the football route, but so that helps when you have something like that. Any defense will work better when you have a rim protector.
So I wanted to follow up a little bit on your transition. So you said you had your great player. Where did you use him? Did you use him as trailer in that offense?
No, we used him as the racker. He was so good in the open court. It took multiple players and if he got ahead of steam, you weren't going to stop him. He was getting into the lane, and he was so crafty and so strong. If he didn't dunk it, he could find some crafty way to get a positive shot off, or if they draw the help, we had some guys who could knock down some shots, and it was just really effective for us. And the teams couldn't get set in their defense. We were attacking so quick and so hard that those junk defenses got neutralized.
Making it so they couldn't deny him the ball then.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We found him
early.
We got the ball in his hands. Well, if he didn't get the rebound himself, which he got a lot of them, then we got it to him right away. And in the open court, if there was one or two guys trying to slow him down, that was a mismatch. We were in good shape.
Yeah, we'll leave somebody else open for a quality shot, right?
No question. Yeah, and it worked pretty well.
All right, so in the same schooling thing, right? You have a master's degree in instructional technology.
I do.
Right? Let's connect basketball and technology. What are some of the ways you feel technology has helped the game of basketball, but then personally may have hurt the game of basketball?
My first master's was instructional technology. I'd say the technology that we used back then is now obsolete, but the concepts of using technology in education has still been helpful. In terms of basketball, man, it's so different now. I think back to when I first started coaching, and everything was done typed up or and drawn out plays, on scouting reports and everything else, and VHS tapes and those big old cameras. If you went scouting, you had those big old cameras set up on a tripod, and now it's just so different. So the technology aspect has really changed over time, and I've gotten to see a lot of it in 30 some years, but it's definitely helped in a lot of ways. The scouting aspect is incredibly easier. I remember leaving my young family a lot to go travel, because when we scout, I wanted to do a lot of the scouting, and I obviously sent other people too, but I went a lot and missed a lot of time at home with the family. And now, in our conference, we have, we share every conference game film is shared with every coach. And you're able to get films just by an email, a link. And it's so scouting has been cut probably 95% on the road to being at home. And the other thing is obviously the huddle stats and things like that. I like the analytics stuff, but I'm not really into them heavy. I'm still kind of, I guess, feel like after I've done this so long, I don't need halftime stats to tell me what's going on in the game. I pretty much have a good feel for where they're hurting us and what we're not doing well. But after the game, I don't mind looking at some of the stats. There's way more there than I want to get into. I'm a science teacher, but not a stats teacher. And there's things on there that, I try to figure out what they mean. I'm like, I've gone all these years without knowing. I can go these last years without knowing too. But there are some things on there that I really enjoy. The lineup thing intrigues me. I really like looking at the different lineups. By halfway through the year, you get a pretty good feel. And between that, the lineups part, and just the stats that you can show the kids really easy. Film and stats don't lie, and they really kind of help you maybe get a point across to some kids that this is what's happening. You may see it differently, and they usually do, but this is what we're seeing, and this is what the stats are showing us, and these are the lineups that are working. And when you're in the lineup, we're doing a lot better. When you're in the lineup, you might be scoring, but we're not doing so well. So we got to figure out why that is and adjust. So those things I think have really helped. In terms of hurting, I don't know. Some coaches maybe rely on certain stats too much to give them indicators of how to sub or who to play and so forth. And I guess I'm still more on the gut feeling, old school type, where I don't rely on that. But I can see where that could be a problem maybe for some people. Another positive is, man, if you want some information, you can find information out there anywhere. I love the live clinics. I mean, I get stuff out of the live clinic that I could never get out of watching a stream or a DVD or anything. But I definitely make use of the internet and DVDs to learn more about the game too.
So, Coach, you're saying you didn't enjoy traveling to exchange tapes with the other coaches?
Oh Lord, there was. The scouting's bad enough, but exchanging the VHS tapes or eventually the DVDs, you'd travel hour and a half sometimes.
Everybody's always got good stories. I went to a coach football game one time, and they thought I was a young guy coming, and they're like, "Yo, we don't have any film for you. Will you just give us ours?" I'm like, "Nope." Turn around, went right back home.
Yeah, I've had some empty trips too, where the coach forgot we were supposed to meet before cell phone days, and they were supposed to meet, and no one was there. And so finally left. Oh yeah, I forgot. Or one of the most frustrating stories I remember wasn't mine. It was actually my former coach, Mike Kiss. He was driving up to Chicago to exchange a tape with Sonny Cox at King, and he blew him off. He got all the way up there and got blown off, and so things like that I'm glad I don't do those anymore.
Yeah, I wanted to hit on something you said too before I moved on. It's the lineup feature is great because I think you can really see trends. You can really see that VPS number, all the good divided by all the not so good. And I do think it adds an element of, okay, this kid might have these, main points, rebounds, assists, great stats, but then you look and the VPS number is very low. So I agree fully when you were saying that.
Yeah. The kids having the access to Huddle too, that I'm not sure that them seeing all their stats and VPS and all that stuff is always such a good thing either. Because I've heard some conversations, well, your VPS is only blah, 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 or whatever. So, that's maybe a culture thing we need to address. But so I think there's a lot of great information there, but there's just maybe too much to make me think more, to second guess myself. And I'd rather just kind of go with what I'm seeing and feeling.
Yep. So I wanted to go into a little bit of something unique for you.
Okay.
As you coach at Geneseo, but you kind of talked about teaching at Erie, and Erie is a very small school.
Yes.
And I wanted to hit at for you, what are some of the unique things about teaching at a school that's so small? I'm sure, everybody knows everybody, but maybe what are some of the good and maybe what are some of the not so good?
Yeah. Not only do they know everybody, a lot of them are related to everybody. So you really got to be careful. I tell you, I'm really fortunate to be at Erie. It's not the ideal teaching. It's not ideal teaching there and coaching at Geneseo by any means. But I'm in a great situation at Erie, and everybody says, well, why haven't you left Erie and, gone back to Geneseo or taught somewhere else or whatever? And it's not your typical small rural school. I figured maybe it'd be one of those multiple stopping points on a career, trajectory or whatever. But when I got there, I realized pretty quickly it's a pretty special place. There was about 300 when I coached there. Now we're down to 200 or even a hair under. And you think we'd be really limited, but that's a very wealthy district in terms of money coming into the district. We've got a nuclear plant and 3M and everything else. A lot of the people that live there aren't wealthy, and there would be, I guess, considered in the lower economic area, but the district itself is very wealthy, and we have good kids overall. Despite the decreasing size, we added on to the high school, including a new STEM room for me with pretty much a blank check to fill it with 3D printers and laser cutters, computers, augmented reality and virtual reality machines. We're building a new elementary, and they're just going to write a check for it. They're just going to write a check for the whole new elementary building. I want to say there's maybe 27 million in the bank or something right now. It's crazy. So we get almost whatever we want, and the clientele is good, and they let you do a good job. And we do a good job. We're the last rankings I saw, we were number 2 behind Pleasant Valley, Iowa, in this area for education. And our scores are always among the highest. And so it's just a great place to teach. My class sizes range from under 10 to, at the most I've had is 20. And usually it's less than that. They've capped like my STEM classes at 15. So there's a lot of really good reasons why I haven't left Erie in terms of teaching. It's just great people that want to do a great job, and they put a big value on education. So, and it's only a 20-minute drive to and from school, which is actually a nice time to, either reflect or listen to a podcast or think about practice or just kind of get my mind on what we're going to do in class that day. So it works out really well for me outside of not being in school with my kids. That's one thing that I really wish I could have.
All right, so I want to transition to another organization you're part of, the Illinois Basketball Coaches Association. Yeah. Two-part question here. First of all, why is it important to be a part of associations like that? Whether our listeners are in Illinois, Iowa, Iowa has a great association.
Yeah, they do.
Maybe Indiana, all those great associations across the country. Why is it important to be a part of those associations?
Well, for me, I remember wanting to be a part of it when I first, I started coaching in Indiana, and I saw how strong their association was. I went to their Illinois or Indiana clinic out there and was just in awe. And so I joined their association immediately when I became a head coach out there. And then when I came to Illinois, instantly wanted to do that again. I just felt like, they do such good things. to be a part of that in any way I can, even if it's just the financial support of joining and not getting anything out of it. I thought that was important. But then the things you get out of it make it even more valuable. And I know at the IBC, I've been probably involved for probably 25 years or so. Started out just serving as the 1A, 2A when I was at Erie on the All-Star Selection Committee. I remember writing Chuck Walensky a letter saying I'd like to get involved, and he contacted me, and I just kind of went from there. And now I'm co-chair of the Statewide Clinic, and that's coming up here soon. If I can plug for that. And then also the chairman of the 3A, 4A AllState Selection Committee, and currently third vice president. So in a few, 5 years or so, I'll get to be the president of this organization. So I feel strongly that it's a good organization and want to be a part of it. And I think anybody can gain from being a part of it, but just to financially even support it for all the good things that we do is I think is a positive.
So second part, then you hit right on it, the All-State Selection Committee, right? I wanted you to talk about just what a little bit that goes into that. Obviously I've never experienced, but I feel like it's probably kind of a hard thing to be on, right? Because you got so many talented players that you have to choose from and figure out. Then on top of that, you have probably naturally as a human, you have your biases by players you've seen or whatever. So maybe take us through a little bit of that process and how you guys go into picking those all-state players.
Yeah, I tell you, it is quite a process. I started out as a member, representing our district on the committee before I became the chairman. And as a chairman, I don't vote or anything. I just kind of run the meeting and get all the information organized and ready for the committee to vote, which doesn't seem like it, it's not a big deal for me, except for the month before this meeting. And of course, that's when we're gearing up for regionals and everything else. So that gets thrown on my plate at that time. And that is quite a bit of work. And it's a hassle and everything else, but I think it's really worth it. But basically it works in such a way that coaches, our district reps are supposed to contact every coach in their district and ask them for nominations. Our coaches are also supposed to be watching, players in their area and players they go against for comparison for when we discuss players and stuff. But we end up getting all these nominations sent in. I organize them onto the 3A and 4A. Coaches kind of say, well, I think this one could be a first or second teamer, or this one's a second or third teamer, or this one, might be a special mention type thing. So we kind of get an idea of that going in. But it's definitely not set in stone by any means. So we come in and we all meet. This is about a 5.5 hour meeting where we start. We start with the 4A, and we'll have the kids nominated for first team up there. And every coach will go around and discuss the players in their district. Coaches that know those players will discuss them. We'll talk about comparisons, things that they've done, and things like that. And then there'll be a vote, and the top ones will be on first team. The others go to the second team ballot, and we go through the whole process again and again and again. And we have reps on our committee that are really good about saying, this kid is nominated for second team. He should be on first team ballot. So we would move a kid around or discuss them that way. Or this kid's nominated for first team, and he's not as good as most of the ones nominated on second team, and we'll discuss that. It's not a one person thing, and we go with it, and it gets discussed. And between all the coaches we have, most of these players have been seen by just a handful or to many of the coaches on the committee. And the first team's easy. That's usually the no-brainers, the ones that are going to Duke and things like that. Everybody knows that they're great. When you get to that second and third team and stuff, sometimes you're splitting hairs, especially in the 4A. And so it's really tough. And then 3A, we go through the whole process again. So it's a grueling day, especially on my part, where I have to kind of run the meeting through the entire thing. And I'm just exhausted by the end of that day. And but I feel really good. I think we have a good product we put out. I think we put out a legit all-state team that doesn't take into account media biases or regional biases or anything like that. And I think it's something that's been important to me. I don't know how long I'll keep doing it, especially if as I become president or something like that. We might try to find someone that I feel would do a good job, hand it off to them. But right now, I enjoy doing it. And I think it's a worthwhile part or a big thing for the IBCA. So I take a lot of pride in it.
So you mentioned that you're the co-chair for the Statewide Clinic, which is for our Illinois listeners, which is coming up. Todd
Yes.
and I will actually be attending the first
Awesome.
clinic as well. But do you just want to maybe just for our Illinois listeners, maybe just throw in a quick plug, when it is a little.
Yeah. It's coming up Sunday and Monday, the 18th and 19th of September. We start at noon, I believe, on that Sunday, and we go all throughout the day. There's a great social. It's been at the firehouse, and I think we're still going to have it at the firehouse. All the drinks and pizza you want. And then we go with 3 more speakers on Monday morning, and we're still finalizing who and when and everything else. But man, the lineups that we've put out there for coaches in the past, I think has been outstanding. And sometimes you get speakers, well, I don't know who that is or whatever. But we get speakers that put out great content, and coaches come away every year with feedback that's very positive. So we're happy to get back to a 2-day clinic after a few years of not having one, or just a 1-day again. So it's something that Tom Sigel and Rich Seslowski and I are pretty much in contact every day. And then we got a couple other guys that are on the committee that are helping us try to get some coaches and things like that. But this time of year gets a little hectic. We start panicking a little bit. Oh, we're going to get this guy, that guy. We're still waiting on some commitments from coaches, and we're only a few weeks out. So tomorrow is a day I'm expecting a yes or no from a couple different coaches. So we'll see what happens.
So we wanted to transition to our last 2 segments.
Okay.
The first one we call 30-second timeout. It's kind of your opportunity to talk about whatever you want, whether it be your program or your family,
Sure,
or something else besides basketball you're passionate about, or turn the tables on Todd and I and ask us a question, or however you want to drive it. The next segment is kind of yours.
Okay. Well, we already plugged the IBCA clinic, so I don't need to do that. But I would say that, like I mentioned earlier, going to a live clinic is something that gets my juices going. Talking with other coaches, just being around others who are excited to get the season going. And the Sunday night social is fun. There's other satellite clinics that the IBCA has as well. I think a lot of young coaches miss out on what you get from a live clinic that you can't get from streams or DVD. And I remember, like I said, that first clinic I went to, I was blown away. And I try to get to as many live clinics as I can, just because I get something out of it that I can't get from anywhere else. It's just kind of hard to explain. So I would encourage coaches to go. We make it really affordable for coaches to attend, and you get way more than that out of it. So the other thing I would say, I don't know, lots of coaches and maybe some listening will find themselves in situations where it's really hard to win at the school they're at. All 3 schools that I've been head coach at were that way. And I've obviously chosen to be at those schools, even if it wasn't originally the plan. I've turned down some on one job in particular where it could have been a lot of wins, and but it just wasn't right for me. Winning's great, and winning can be important, and we keep score for a reason. And I'm definitely competitive and want to win. But I would say that what's more important is that you give everything you can to your players and your students, and to grow them and give them a great, valuable experience. There's a lot of great coaches in our Hall of Fame who won a lot of games being at schools with a lot of talent. And unfortunately, there's a lot of coaches who might even be better coaches who will never win as many games because of where they coach. And I would say be okay with that as a young coach. Be the best you can be wherever you currently are. And if you choose to move on to schools that regularly have more talent, then that's awesome. But every player deserves to have a caring, hardworking, knowledgeable coach. And the profession needs a lot of good young coaches who will stick with it. I know we're losing a lot of coaches. So kind of know your why. And it's got to be other than wins and awards and things like that. It can't be about you. I think that was one of the problems that I had before I retired for those 4 years, and my new perspective coming back. It's more about the kids and things like that. And if you do that, you're going to have a great career choice. You're going to love the profession, and you're going to enjoy what you're doing, and you're going to reap a lot of rewards that aren't financial.
All right, let's go to our last segment here. Quick hitters, rapid fire.
Okay.
Random questions kind of about you, about whatever. All right. First one.
Yeah.
Geneseo High School is the Maple Leafs. What's the story behind that?
Yes.
Yeah. When we get asked that, and why is it grammatically incorrect and not the leaves? But
I didn't even
the
think about
only
that.
yeah, like we're like Toronto that way, I guess. But the only thing that I've ever heard, and it makes sense, our town has a ton of maple trees, and it always had. I used to have a lot more before some got destroyed for a new road, but and so the town has been called Maple City for as long as I know. And there's all kinds of businesses that are Maple City this and Maple City that. So the only thing that has ever made sense that I've ever heard is that the area had so many maple trees that we were the Maple Leafs. And, it's not the most ferocious name out there, but we tell the kids, they might make fun of our name before the game, but after the game, they knew they were in a battle. So it is what it is. And, there probably are names out there that want to have less than Maple Leafs even. So we're okay.
That's awesome. It's a little bit more simpler than you thought, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
As far as I know, that's all it is.
All right. Next one. You mentioned you played in intramurals at Indiana. Was there ever a time where like a ringer showed up and you're like, what is this guy? Or a pickup game you played in where like you're like, wait, who's that?
All the
find
time.
out later.
Yeah. The talent there was I played at Augustana, and when I went to grad school, the talent drop off at some intramural games wasn't there. We had Indiana all-staters that weren't playing basketball in college or going to school in Indiana. We had the football players coming and playing pickup games and stuff. In fact, my wife was at Township School. They put together a team, and you think optometry students, well, that can't be any good. But we had two other players who played Division III basketball, another who played junior college, and some other good athletes. And one year we actually won the entire intramural tournament. And I think there was something like 500 and some teams entered, and we were the champions. And we had to beat the dorm champions in the semifinal and the football team in the championship game. And, they pulled, there's bleachers pulled out. There's hundreds of people there watching. There's a trophy. At Indiana, anything basketball is a big deal. So I actually really enjoyed that. So, yeah, there was a great competition every time you went to the Hyper building to play some basketball. And then in that intramural tournament, the deeper you got, you were going against some quality college level competition when you were playing.
Only in Indiana.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy out there.
So for you, maybe an underrated place to eat or go to or somewhere in Geneseo.
Almost everywhere, we're fortunate. Almost everywhere here is pretty good or great. And a lot of people have their favorites. So if you were to tell someone, well, I think that place is underrated, they say, oh no, we eat there all the time. We love it. So it'd be hard to find a place that everyone could agree on is underrated. But there's a couple that I would come to mind, I guess. There's a little tiny Chinese restaurant in the strip mall, kind of out by the Interstate 80 on the south side of town that if we want Chinese, we go there. It's really good. And it's called New China. And like I said, you'd drive past it and not even think about stopping in there, but their Chinese is as good as anywhere we've had. There's another place. It's not really in Geneseo. It's actually out more by our house. So we use it quite a bit. It's a kitchen in a convenience store called the Country Store. And there's a bar attached to it called the Way Station that the Country Store cooks for because of the same owner. But man, they have some really good food. And we order out from there quite a bit. And, there's a lot of people that when you tell them the food there is really great, they're just like, what? And so we're fortunate to be about 1.5 miles from them down the road. And we call them quite often.
All right, next one. Favorite ice cream flavor?
When I was a kid, it's Butterbrickle. And I don't see that very often anymore. I probably should hunt it down because I know they still make it. But I'm really not picky. But I would have to say Butterbrickle just because that was what I always wanted. We had a Schwann's truck that would drive up to our house when I was on the farm when I was a kid. And whenever we got Butterbrickle, I was thrilled.
Now I want to try Butterbrickle.
Yeah.
All right. So it's a lazy Sunday afternoon. It's in summer. You don't have much going. You're watching TV. Would you rather watch baseball or golf?
Oh, baseball. I don't golf and I don't watch it. I can enjoy a peaceful game of baseball, especially if my team's playing. But of course, then it might not be so peaceful if my team, I get upset or something. But I would choose baseball over golf.
Leads us right into the next question.
I was gonna say,
what's your team? We have it on here, but we're gonna guess. You never know because I
Oh,
would that
my
way.
hat.
So, oh, you got Boston? Okay, I saw that.
Yeah,
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
But in where you're at, it's kind of an interesting baseball area because you
Sure.
can't see a lot of games from
Right.
Kansas City, even
Right.
the Cardinals, the Cubs, because Iowa doesn't hardly get any of those games a lot of
Right.
times. Sometimes they're blacked out. So you're a Boston guy?
I am. Yeah. I mean, Cubs and Cardinals, that's big around here. And if I between those two, I would pick the Cubs. Probably my dad rooted for them. My wife grew up with a father who was a big Cubs fan, so she likes them. But yeah, since 1975, I was an impressionable 10-year-old kid. The Red Sox were playing the Reds in the World Series, and ever since then they've been my team. And I don't really watch much NFL or root for any pro football team. In the NBA, I watch it more as a coach than a fan. But another, I guess, decision I stuck with as a kid was the Denver Nuggets. But the Red Sox are my pro team passion, and but since 1975, and that's kind of who I've rode the highs and the lows with, and kind of like most fans that they're into a team, you live and breathe every pitch sometimes.
Well, Coach, we can't thank you enough for joining us here on a beautiful Sunday. It looks like in your background.
Yeah.
It looks like it's a beautiful day there. And we look forward to seeing you at the clinic.
I look forward to seeing you guys too.
Seeing a bunch of our coaches. It was awesome episode, and we got to learn a little bit more about Geneseo.
That's right. Yeah.
And
stop on down.
Some of the stuff you're doing. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm really appreciative and humbled to be a part of this. What you're doing is great, and happy to help out and be a part anytime you want.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast in concert with the Illinois Basketball Coaches Association. Please remember to give us a 5-star rating wherever you may listen. For more show content and upcoming episodes, follow us on Twitter at After the Timeout and subscribe to our podcast for upcoming episodes. Thank you for listening.